Super new dilemma today. My phone battery is almost out and I need to have it plugged in while I make this video. And that, you know how the cord comes out the bottom. And so I can't just prop it up on something because the cord won't keep it stable. So now I have to hold it in my hand while I make this video. So hopefully it won't jiggle too much. We're working with chapter 18. Sorry, it's so low. There, it's a little bit better. Cognitive development in late adulthood. Late adulthood, again, 60, 65 to 125. Of course, we don't live that long, but that's the maximum. Remember, lifespan, that's what's possible. So we do have up until 125 years to theoretically examine. We did physical development last time, and this whole chapter, 18, is just for cognitive. So it's just for the thinking changes that go on. You know that you've been around older people, and there's a lot of changes in their memory and things like this. So that's what we're going to talk about. You start with the notes, and we mentioned before that processing speed declines, definitely happening in late adulthood. They're just not as fast to pick up on things. That also interferes with driving because their reaction and time is going to be slowed down too. My notes are over here. So they start to not feel comfortable driving. But exercise really helps this, both physical and cognitive. Exercise is a big deal. Can't stress it enough. I think we've already mentioned that with the physical stuff. Same thing for cognitive. Exercise, physical and mental, it's a big deal. Physical exercise improves blood flow and all those muscular things we talked about. But for the brain to function, it's the blood flow that matters most. Their attention span is a little different now in late adulthood. You may notice that if you go out to a restaurant, they have a hard time paying attention to what the waiter or waitress is talking about. Now, some of that's hard to tease out. How much of that is hearing problem? Because remember we said, that hair's getting too long. I need my haircut, or woman. That 60% cannot hear a normal conversation. So, that's going to interfere with attention span, definitely. But specifically just attention, when we rule out hearing differences, they have a harder time selecting what to pay attention to out of all the different stimuli. Once they get the attention on a stimulus, then they can maintain it, which is called sustained attention. But the acquisition of attention on a stimulus when there's a bunch of other distracting ones is not as good. That's called selective attention, selecting what to pay attention to. So that's harder. Memory changes, and we're talking about typical memory changes here. Memory for past events is not very good. Now, I know it's funny because Grandma can remember what she was wearing her first day of school and all these details from earlier part of her life, but not if she took her pill this morning or her doctor appointment for 3 days from now. And the reason we think she's so good at this memory for these past events is because she can give you great details. Well, research has shown that detail does not equal accuracy. So just because somebody can remember details does not mean that what they remember is true. So don't be fooled by details. That's a big deal for eyewitness testimony in general too. We're convinced when someone remembers lots of specifics about a situation that they actually have a good memory. And there's no proof for that. So memory for past events when we evaluate it is not very good. Memory for future events is not very good. But one thing that's very important to keep in mind about older people when we're studying their memory is the method that we're using to study it. Okay? The approach we're taking to testing memory. We've used a very specific process for years and years and years when assessing memory of anyone of any age, once they're old enough. And that is to give them a list of words, give them time to memorize them, take the list away, give them some distractor activity like putting a puzzle together, and then after a period of time, asking them to repeat what was on that list. It's very simple, very standardized, very common, been done for years, okay? But we started thinking, maybe that method isn't so good. Maybe it's biased toward younger people. And maybe younger people have an advantage on this kind of memory test because they're closer to school age. And that's the kind of thing you do in school. You take in information, you try to remember it, and you try to spit it back out. But that's not something you've done lately if you're 68 or 72. It's been a lot longer. So maybe we need to give a different kind of memory test, one that would be more fair to everyone of different ages. So what we decided to do was give them a test of situations, like a story. They heard a story and they have to remember the story and tell the story to somebody else, not a cold list of words that really does not relate to life at all. I guess maybe a grocery list, but even that has a story with it. You know what you're making for dinner. So we tell them a story about a social situation, and then they have to go and tell somebody else the story. And then when we do it that way, we don't see as much of a decline in their memory. Now, it doesn't mean that it's perfect still, but there is some decline, but not the same dramatic amount. So we've been thinking maybe we've been testing memory wrong all along, with a bias toward younger people. Another important thing about memory is older people's perception of their memory ability. That's very important, it turns out, for their overall capabilities in memory. So here's what we did to kind of test this out. We gave two groups of older people, and we've got two groups of them. They're the same. They're the same educationally, because more education may affect your memory ability. They're the same health-wise, because we know some health problems affect memory. They are taking the same medications. They're the same age range, both groups. So all these things, male's female, the kind of job they do, all these things are equal, supposedly, as much as you can for humans. And we gave them both a memory test, and we expected them to do fine. And they did. But that's not what we told them. We told this group over here, you didn't do so well, but that's normal. It's all right. No big deal. It's okay. Don't worry about it. We told this group over here, you did fine, which both sides did. Then we gave them another memory test. And the group we told that didn't do very well, they did poorly on this test. The group over here that we said you did fine, they did fine, just like before. So that makes us think the person's perception of their memory ability can impact the actual functioning of their memory. That's a big deal. Grandma gets upset and says, I can't remember anything anymore, and my memory's just shot. We have a vested interest in saying, that's not true. Probably because it's not really true. Because sometimes older people will misinterpret any kind of typical memory loss for something simple like forgetting to take their keys out of the car as some sort of sign of deterioration or abnormality. Where if you do it at 22, you're going to say, I'm stressed, I'm busy, got a lot on my mind. You're not going to think that you've got Alzheimer's or some other kind of dementia or that your old age is causing it. But late life people might do that. So we need to be thoughtful of helping them keep their perceptions more accurate of their memory capability, because then they'll be able to remember better. All right. Factors that impact memory. This is all in the notes right here. Health, economic status, education level, job, medications, all these things matter. Use it or lose it. Never on the notes. Definitely true. If you don't use your brain, it does not work as well. Just like your biceps or your quadriceps. If you don't use them, they're not as strong. They can't function as well. So same thing. Use it or lose it is true. So grandma doing those crossword puzzles, that's a good thing. Another section that we do in cognitive development is work. And with work, we're looking, remember, 60, 65 plus. I think most people are expecting or hoping to retire by then and not be working as hard as they do when they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So the topic of work for late adulthood is retirement. Now, we know those boomers retire younger. They retire in middle age. I get to retire in middle age, 54. Yay. 2026, June 30th. Not counting. So we're going to talk about retirement here. There's different stages of retirement. You guys are actually in a stage of retirement. I know you're not thinking that. That sounds strange, but you are. And it's called remote. You're in the remote phase. Man, you're just not even thinking about it. It is so far away, it doesn't cross your mind. That is totally normal. But that is a stage of retirement called the remote phase. Not thinking about it. Not planning for it. Then you have the near phase. I think I'm between the remote and the near. 6 years is a good bit of time, but near phase is when it's coming closer and you're not retired yet. So both of these are about before you retire, but you're thinking about it. You're planning it. I've been planning, but it's becoming like closer and more imminent. So you give more attention. Then we retire and we have the first phase of retirement called the honeymoon phase. Just like getting married, you have all these great expectations of how wonderful it's going to be. And your future looks so bright. You got to wear your shades, right? It's how exciting. You get to sleep as long as you want. You get to do all the activities you haven't been able to do because you've been working so long. It just sounds wonderful. Yippee, right? But we know, just like in marriages, the honeymoon phase doesn't last. They start leaving their socks on the floor and they got habits you don't like. And so we have a disenchantment phase. And that's where we go, I'm getting kind of bored. Maybe you have family members like that. I don't really like this. I thought I liked fishing all day, but it's getting kind of boring. Or I need a routine. Or maybe their health has failed or their spouse's health has gone down. So what they planned on doing during retirement, they can't do anymore. Maybe income changed. Maybe all of a sudden they're taking care of grandkids. Maybe they're taking care of a sick spouse. So it's just basically where they become dissatisfied with retirement. And they can do different things. They can go back to work part-time in the same field, a different field, pick up other kinds of leisure activities, but they have to make a change. And that's the reorientation phase. They got to change what they thought about retirement and how they expected it to go. So they're going to reevaluate and plan for the future. So it's like adjusting. Okay? It's kind of easy. Then they live it out. That's the stability phase. They're living out their new plan. Their revitalized, their adjusted plan for the rest of their lives. And we call this the stability phase because they just live it. They live it out. So it can go on for years and years. The last phase kind of sounds bad. The termination phase, it sounds like you die, but you don't. You have to, I'm sure you realize this when you think about it. When we think of a retiree, we think of someone who is golfing, working in their garden, taking trips, enjoying themselves, young enough to still do things. And of course, we're thinking of the boomers. They're our model right now, and they're younger and wealthier and healthier than they have been in the past, other generations. So you think of them and you think of them doing all these great things. That's retirement. But there's going to come a point in time where you can't do those things anymore because of deterioration, illnesses or whatever. So make sure my phone's still charging. I keep getting a message. It better be charged or working right now. So the termination phase is essentially when you no longer seen as a retiree. And it means usually that you've taken on some sort of dependent or sick role. Someone has to take care of you. You're not in charge of yourself anymore, of your life. You're not as independent and functional as you used to be. Can't do all those things you were doing. So there's a time where we don't consider you a retiree anymore, and that's the termination phase. Other topics in the cognitive chapter, which I think really could have been in the socio-emotional, but depression. This can be a time for depression. You have a lot of changes in their life, a lot of loss of friends, siblings, spouses, parents already. And so a lot of loss maybe of functioning or independence or control over their life or things they like to do. So depression can be a peak time. Yep. Dementia these are a little bit of abnormalities. Dementia is a problem with memory, language, and reasoning. There's lots of different kinds of dementia. Alzheimer's is just a type of dementia. There can be dementias from strokes, and other kinds of medical conditions. So just know in general, dementia can happen. Again, we're doing typical, not atypical. Another cognitive topic, doesn't seem cognitive to me, but is abuse. Anytime somebody's in a dependent position, there's a possibility to be abused because they can't really fight it off. So the number one person to abuse someone in late life, everyone might think is a healthcare worker, right? Nursing home worker. Everybody's worried about that. but it's not. You need to be worried about grandma abusing grandpa. It's the spouse. And it's not, it's not like the spouse is all of a sudden mean or anything, or they've had problems in the past. The point is that they're the ones who are usually taking care of the person the most. And that is exhausting. That can be very tiring, very stressful. Caregivers are a big population of depressed and anxious people. They often need a lot of help, a lot of support because they're with that person a lot. So the spouse then becomes the one around them the most and most likely to abuse them. So it's kind of not surprising. Last topic in chapter 18 is a short one, yay, and that is religion. We already said that we're becoming more religious as we get older. We're coming closer to our own mortality. But in late adulthood, even more so because we have all those losses we talked about. It's very important for their psychological well-being to have this religious help and support. Women more so than men. And we know that women are more religious than men. So where religion in the past was important for like longevity because of the support, but also because of the coping for stress, which is part of the support, but also lifestyle. Now it's mainly just coping with the stressors and the problems of late life. So that's it. Chapter 18, we did 16 minutes. Cool.